When it comes to Alan Wake, some people might consider me a little biased, just like I might be with other games such as Dark Souls and Bloodborne. When the remaster to Alan Wake was announced, the excitement was almost unbearable. Finally, many other people will be able to experience Alan Wake in the best way possible, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get that sequel many of us cult followers have been clamouring onto for over a decade. But until that time arrives, let's take a look at the first game itself, see how it holds up 11 years later, and judge for myself how the remaster plays. As a side note, there won't be any huge spoilers, just the basics to get you covered on some of the story and characters. And so with that, here's my review of Alan Wake Remastered.
My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
To no one's surprise, you play as the titular character Alan Wake, a best-selling writer who arrives in the town of Bright Falls with his wife Alice. For a little while now, he's been suffering from writer's block, and so the vacation is to hopefully help clear his head with a change of scenery. After meeting with some of the locals and picking up a cabin key from a creepy woman in a funeral dress, he and Alice arrive at their cabin. Later that night, they have a fight, which Alan storms out of. Moments later, he hears the screams of his wife, and when he goes back to the cabin for her, he catches a glimpse of her form in the lake below and dives in after her. After blacking out, he wakes up behind the wheel of his crashed car 1 week later, with Alice nowhere in sight. While on his way to find help, he finds pages of a manuscript where he is named the author, but it's a manuscript he doesn't remember writing. What's even weirder is that the words on the page seem to foretell events that are either going to happen to him or other characters in Bright Falls. It's not long before he encounters shadowy dark forces that are trying to kill him, and the only way to fight them is with light. From here, Alan has to try and find out who kidnapped Alice and how to get her back. But with dark forces at play, is there more to Bright Falls than he realizes? Even 11 years later, the story certainly holds up. As you progress, Alan will narrate certain events to help give a bit of context, which not only serves to help tell the story, but also give a little bit of direction on what you're supposed to do. The game is told in an episodic format, as if it's a television show, where each episode ends on a cliffhanger and subsequent episodes provide a previously on segment to help remind you of the story. In total, there are 8 episodes to play through, 6 main episodes and 2 specials, those specials originally being downloadable content released in 2010 for the base game on the Xbox 360 version. Across Bright Falls, you'll meet some of the local townsfolk, and going back into this game years later, I was looking forward to re-experiencing some of the wild and nutty personalities, such as Barry Wheeler, who comes to Bright Falls when he doesn't hear from Alan for an entire week.
I'm Barry Wheeler, his agent. If you have business with Mr. Wake, you talk to me. You yokels won't know what hit you once I sick my lawyers on your asses.
Despite being missing in Bright Falls, Alice Wake also plays a pivotal role, though she mostly appears in flashback scenes.
Yeah, nice story, writer boy. You made that up right now, didn't you?
No. Seriously.
I love you, even if you are a liar. Thanks for this.
Some of the local townsfolk are also clearly based on characters in other bits of pop culture media, such as Cynthia Weaver, who is clearly based on the log lady from Twin Peaks.
Don't go in there, young man. You can hurt yourself in the dark.
There are also some characters which, when re-experiencing the game, were a little weaker in personality than I remember. Robert Nightingale, an FBI agent who also comes to Bright Falls, really is just as one-dimensional as they come.
Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent. There's no way you're walking out of here.
And even with the local sheriff, Sarah Breaker, I couldn't help but feel how both dry and over the top she can be in various scenes.
Come in, Mr. Wake. Your phone's on the desk. The battery was dead. It's charged now.
That was... wow. I think we're okay.
Overall though, most of the characters you encounter have a role to play and usually do them well. While Alan Wake might seem like your standard third-person shooter, it does have a few unique mechanics. as mentioned in the story section, you'll need to fight with light. For a lot of the game, you'll have your trusty flashlight, which you can use to burn away the darkness on the enemies, known as the Taken. Once you've done that, you can shoot them to your heart's content, where they'll soon fizzle away. Light is often considered safety as well, where you can use streetlights to help heal your health when it's very low. It won't just be flashlights you'll use to fight the darkness, however, as you'll also be able to use flares, flashbang grenades, and various other light sources within the environment. You'll mostly be killing enemies with a revolver, but if you keep your eyes open, you'll find other weapons such as shotguns and rifles. You will also need to keep your eye on your resources and be on the lookout for ammo for your guns and batteries for your flashlight, since strengthening your flashlight will drain batteries. It's a gameplay aspect which might come across as making zero sense for some players, but I just like to imagine the darkness is literally absorbing the power from your light. Annoyingly, the selection of weapons are vastly limited, and what I know some people won't like, which was a complaint in the original release, is that between cutscenes you may end up losing all the items you just gathered, and the game isn't always obvious at telling you when it's the best time to unload everything on the enemy before you lose it all. Playing on normal difficulty, in earlier episodes I often found myself full on both ammo and batteries, which of course I would end up losing by the next episode. It's a shame Nightmare mode is locked until you beat the game in normal mode first, as for game veterans such as myself, I would have appreciated the challenge right from the offset. Despite that, although I do love a challenge from time to time, some of the areas you traverse through can be very small and claustrophobic, and having to try and deal with enemies in such a tiny space can be more of a hassle than a fun challenge. Originally, Remedy wanted the game to be open world, but in order to tell the story they wanted, they instead made the game more linear, and so you'll usually be following a set path guided with the compass in the top left corner to reach your destination. There are some open spaces, however, as from time to time the path might open up to a large wooded area to give you some breathing room. Perhaps you'll also find some hidden paths to find some extra loot, and a few times there are some driving sections with vast open spaces to drive across. There's tons of collectibles to find as well, so exploration is highly recommended despite its linear progression. With the remaster, this gave Remedy the chance to maybe take a look at some of the gameplay aspects they perhaps hated in the original Xbox 360 release and reevaluate. However, they chose not to. For some, I'm sure it's great that Remedy decided not to touch the gameplay at all, you know, preservation and all that. For others, such as myself, I really wish they had done some tweaking. In certain portions of the game, you have to rely on the AI to fight for you, and they're just not that great, since they either just miss enemies entirely, or begin shooting before you even burn the darkness away that protects the Taken. Then there's the issue with the camera, and although I didn't find it too much of an issue on my playthrough, I noticed other streamers and YouTubers kept noting how the camera constantly switches sides. This is because to switch camera sides, you press down the right thumbstick, which as many controller players know, they usually end up accidentally pressing without even realising it. And yet there's not even an option to turn this off. In some of the in-game cutscenes, the animations of characters haven't been changed at all, so these come across as looking incredibly stiff, and it feels like you're watching robots and not people. Yes, I know they're just fictional characters in a video game, but it took me out of the experience a little bit. Finally, my biggest gripe on the gameplay, and I'm sure everybody who plays this game can agree, the driving. This is by far the worst aspect. The driving is super stiff for absolutely no reason, and often the slightest turn of the thumbstick can make you veer wildly out of control. The roads also feel way too bumpy, so to drive across them with such stiff controls can be an absolute nightmare. The remaster was a chance to tweak a few of these aspects to make the experience a bit more memorable for newcomers, but alas, sadly not for any of these gameplay areas. However, the things Remedy did change in a remaster are things such as various character models, in-game assets, and cinematics. Pretty much every single named character has a new cinematic model and in-game character model, which is great, as certainly in the original release some of the lip syncing and facial animations of those models would look, well, let's just say the nightmares might finally stop after the upgrade.
Cheer up, handsome. We're here.
It It's clear more effort was put into the cinematics, as despite the gameplay not getting the same treatment, I noticed that the stiff animations in the old cinematics felt way more fluid in the remaster. Remedy also stated that they changed the lighting. Personally, I didn't see much of a difference, though I will note that if you find the game seems a lot more lighter than the original release, I would recommend going into your settings and decreasing the brightness, since I did find that the bar that should have been hidden was showing as visible, though the lighting wasn't too big of an issue for me anyway. I'm also disappointed there's no photo mode to come with the game. It's a feature which has become the standard in various game releases, and a game such as this absolutely deserves one, and I can only hope that this is added in future patches. I myself played on the PlayStation 5 version, so with this came 4K visuals at 60 FPS, which felt nice compared to the 720p 30 FPS in the original version. With the PS5 version also comes with DualSense controls, where a small tug on the left trigger allows you to aim your flashlight without strengthening it, and a full hard tug does strengthen it. With the right trigger, it just takes a mild bit of effort in order to shoot your gun. Graphically, I didn't encounter too many issues, and for the most part the game looked gorgeous, especially since they've added some more plant life to help give the forests a more natural feel. Although I didn't encounter many issues as I've stated, there are some textures that were a little funky. Within the same section of episode 3, I was able to use these binoculars, and not only was the gas station just a texture blur, but so was the radio tower in the distance, and yet when I arrived at those locations, they were fine. Some of the background character models seemingly didn't get the upgrade, so seeing what just appears to be a walking blur move past the diner can be a little distracting, though I can understand you're not supposed to be looking too hard. That's especially true with something I noticed in episode 6. Even though this particular scene is set in 2008, they have a calendar set up for 2010. While not a huge issue, it's small details like this which can take a player right out of the moment. One other weird thing is that while the cinematics have been given a glow up, I did notice that sometimes there can be some weird sort of frame rate glitches as they play. Here in episode 1, this character, Clay Stewart, has this weird sort of haze around him that isn't present with anybody else. Now, while I myself didn't encounter any game-breaking issues on my platform of choice, browsing Twitter and the Alan-Wake subreddit, many other players did seem to have some issues with other platforms, especially on the PC where, despite having high-spec builds, the game would seem to run at lower frame rates. Other issues included some graphical errors, such as Alan literally not loading into the game, and even various in-game assets just loading in as bright white objects. I can only hope these issues get patched if they haven't already. There are a few new additions, however. Remedy added an extra in-game commentary by the game's head writer, Sam Lake, which I'm always here for Sam Lake. In this commentary, you can learn some secrets around the development of the game, and even to help explain some of the links between Alan Wake and Control. This is obviously only recommended for those who have beaten the games once already, so experience them first, then replay with the commentary on. Remedy even added some extra Easter eggs to help tie the game into Control, which helped bring the world more alive. The QR codes that were originally only found in the base PC version have also been changed, and linked to new videos that I shan't spoil. One final thing before we wrap up this review is I wanted to just give so much love and praise to the music, which even 11 years later is just outstanding. With the atmosphere being dark and mysterious, you'll have moments when the music just feels suspenseful and deep, helping to bring the scene together. There's also scenes which are meant to be calm and hopeful, and what I wanted to do is just play some of the music for you here, just so you can get a feel on what to expect. These songs are written by the game's composer, Petri Alanko. You'll also be played some other licensed songs which, while I cannot play for obvious copyright reasons, help make the game feel more alive and in tune with what it's trying to portray within its story. The music by Finnish band Poets of the Fall is also still spectacular to this day. They perform 3 songs in the game, 2 of which are under the in-game band name Old Gods of Asgard. There's a scene in episode 4 which is just wild and crazy, and I know the majority of players will be fully on board with the game by the time they reach this scene. Alan Wake still remains one of my favourite video games of all time. Its story is spectacularly written, the soundtrack is breathtaking, and the gameplay mostly holds up 11 years later. Graphically, the environments look incredible, though it's not without a few drawbacks in a couple of odd textures here and there. The updated cinematics make the game feel more like the show it was trying to portray originally, but again, they too have the odd drawback. I just wish Remedy had taken the remaster a little further, updating and tweaking just some of the annoying gameplay aspects which bothered many in the original release. I'm also disappointed there's no photo mode, as the game like this absolutely deserves one. Although, like Rose, I am a massive Alan Wake fan and may have a biased opinion, I am still critical. The remaster isn't perfect. It has issues, but for someone trying to get the full experience of the Remedy connected universe that they are building, Alan Wake Remastered is still a fantastic stepping stone to help you get the bigger picture in this universe. So from me, Alan Wake Remastered gets an 8 out of 10. If you like this review and want to know more about Alan Wake, check out my video on 10 things to know about Alan Wake Remastered. Please give this video a like, subscribe, and comment below on your thoughts of the game if you've played it already. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.